Today we have Amit Singh. He's an expert on Sikh history, Sikh art, runs a page called SikhScope.
Painter starts to do the portrait, and then when he gets to the face, he says, the face is glowing so much, I can't paint this. And Suraj Prakash just says that Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji takes the pen and they draw their own face in. There was a Kal Takht right here, right? And to the right of it, there was a large palace. There's paintings from the 1830s, so like when Ranjit Singh was still alive. The first Dasam Granth Bir, it has a portrait of Guru Gobind Singh Ji in there. And what's unique is like people that have done research, they say that that painting or that portrait of Guru Gobind Singh Ji is unlike the other portraits from the surrounding hill states. The theory that they've come up with is in that time at the Anandpuri Darbar, a new style of painting had come, and they call it the Anandpuri style.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਫੇਰ ਖੁੱਲੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਤੇ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ Today we have Amit Singh, who's a expert in a lot of topics actually. He's a graduate of UC Davis, now pursuing graduate studies in dentistry. But he's an expert on Sikh history, Sikh art, runs a page, I believe it's called SikhScope.
Yeah.
So we'll link that, follow it, look at it, dope stuff. So let me ask you this, how'd you get into like Sikh art and Sikh history, like given that you're in the dentistry field, I think you got your bachelor's in biochem as well, right?
Yeah, in biochemistry. So not an expert yet, hoping one day to get there. Right now I'm just hobbyist mostly. But I think social media played a large part. Obviously when you grow up, you go to Gurdwaras and stuff, you listen to Katha, you don't really get like the context of those stories. Like growing up in the West, you go to the Gurdwara every once in a while. If you go a lot, like obviously the Katha, you can understand it a lot better. But, I would just sit there, hear the stories, not really contemplate them, go home. And as a kid, I always wondered, like, where do we get these stories from, right? But I never really looked into it. I think Twitter played a big part in it. There were a lot of history accounts, and they would post excerpts from, like, Pant Prakash or just other books. And I've never heard of these things before, right? Suraj Prakash, Pant Prakash. So I saw those, and I was like, man, I want to get into this stuff. Researched it, and, that's how I really got into it. The SikhScope part, I was more into photography, really. So I would dig through archives, the Royal Collection Trust. It's the Royal Family of England. They have this huge archive of photography from like all over the world, and obviously a lot of India because the Raj over it. Yeah. So like I searched it up, and I see these crazy photos of like the rulers, Sis Satluj rulers from like Nabha, Patiala, Jind, stuff like that. But you'll see normal people. Like we have this photo right here of the Akali Nahangs. That was when a prince came to Amritsar, and all the people, they would stand like in the city because it's a Gora passing through, and they never saw a white person. So they take photos of not just that, there are also pictures from that same day, people standing on balconies with shawls and everywhere. It's crazy stuff. I'm just like, man, this is really dope. Like I get it out, so like people will probably want to see this.
Yeah, definitely. I think like because the main pictures we see is really just what's presented to us on like pictures, or maybe like when we go in the Gurdwara, we'll see like the same usual pictures or the paintings, right? Exactly. Of Guru Sahibs and like other things, but we don't really see like, I guess aside from like the mainstream pictures of Guru Sahibs, we don't really see a lot of like the rulers, like you said, a lot of those people, a lot of like prominent Sikhs who were just who were not exactly at that level, but they were still like a part of the community. They were still doing things, generals, scholars, people in academia, things like that. They have a lot of history as well, and like a lot of it has been documented. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's definitely like it's amazing to see that you're bringing it out at least.
Yeah, that was my main part. So, but then I also got into the art side. Like you saw a lot of these auctioning off Sikh art, a lot of books, like the Devinder Tour, In Pursuit of Empire. He has a lot of dope stuff in there. Not just he has art, photography. He also has weapons too, from like the Sikh Empire. Some I think even from the Misl Era. So all that stuff, I saw it. I'm like, man, like people my age want to see this stuff. They just don't know where to find it.
It's inspiring.
Yeah. So like once I saw it, like there were already other pages posting it. But I was like, I have a lot, that I found in archives. I'm like, oh, I'll just post it too, just for fun. Yeah. Obviously, like, I don't get anything out of this, but I just think it's dope.
Yeah, like if I think because you definitely have to like dig a little bit to find those, right? And some people just either don't have the time or don't want to dig.
Exactly. So, yeah, and once you like get to know a little bit, like the main ones are like obviously the Royal Collection Trust. There are auction websites like Bonhams, like you can go on up in there, just type in Sikh, and so many things come up, like paintings. There's this bust of Maharaja Dalip Singh from Italy that was made in like the 1860s, and it was sold in that auction. I think it recently sold again. So like I posted that as well.
Do you know how much these things go for?
So the bust, it went for over €1 million in like 2008, but it lost a lot of value. I don't know how.
Really?
Yeah. So it sold for a couple 100,000 like a couple years ago.
Do you think there's like a big like market, I guess, or market or audience for these type of things?
It's getting bigger
in the Sikh community, or
way bigger. Like that was like the only one where I saw where there was a depreciation. But you can find the same paintings sold over again for like 3-4 times the value. Like I found that there was this painting, I think of like Maharaja Sher Singh, and like 10 years ago it sold for 3,000 or 4,000 pounds, and now it's sold for 40,000. Wow. Like 10x value.
Yeah.
So people know about Sikh art. Maybe like the average Apna doesn't. You know, that's why I'm posting it.
I feel
like,
you know, I mean, this might be a bit of a reach, but like to some extent, it's been hidden from us. You know, like whether like on purpose or by accident, but you know, like, because if you look at those type of pictures, you see like these Maharajas and stuff, right? You remember that Sada vi Raj honta tha, right? And so I think just to like make sure that inspiration doesn't get back into the youth, it's kind of been hidden. Right?
Yeah, and I also think people just aren't gonna make that effort to see that stuff, but also because now that we have the internet, these things are accessible, right?
Yeah.
Before they were just in private collections. Like obviously, I'm talking about auction houses. They go to collectors. They just keep them with them. Yeah. And they never see the light of day.
Yeah.
Except for those people that publish books. Like I said, the Tur collection. Also, Dr. Narinder Singh Kapani. You know,
the
father.
Kapani collection.
Yeah, the Kapani collection. He not only published a book, but you can actually go to the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco, and there's a whole section dedicated to the Sikh Empire. I went recently. They had like the Khalsa battle standard. They had a ring stamp of Maharaja Ranjit Singh that I think he would use on the letters to stamp. So really dope stuff. Original book of Maharaja Ranjit Singh that's from like the 1830s. So yeah, there's people that have done a lot to like put this stuff out there. Now it's up to us to go out there and like look at it and support it. Because you know, before that I had no idea that existed. I don't know how long that's existed for. In the Asian Art Museum, I don't know how many people know about that, right? So like, those things aren't out there, but you have to also look for them.
You have to
dig find them, and dig yourself. So I think that's where like we need a little bit of work. But again, you know, these things weren't accessible for a very long time. It's only recently where you can find these things. So I think it's just the next step we have to take. Okay, now they're out there. Like, let's show everyone, like,
show the world what they are.
The art that we used to have.
It's truly art. Yeah. So let me ask you this: if there's 3 or 5 maybe main pieces that always come to mind, whether they're art, whether they're artifacts, weapons, things like that, what would you say are the most intriguing to you?
I think the paintings of Maharaja Ranjit Singh Darbar, they always come up. Obviously, the famous one where they're sitting on top of a building. I don't know which one it is, but you can see Darbar Sahib in the back.
I think it's that one.
And he's leading to like Granthis, right? There's 2 Granthis in front of him. His palace is over there. I think that one's just so iconic. I think it's by August Schuft. And his paintings are pretty insane, and they always come to mind. The one of Maharaja Sher Singh holding the Khanda. The one of Ranjit Singh's Darbar in Lahore, whereas another scene, Maharaja Sher Singh's coming back from a hunt. So, like, those pieces come to mind. Some artifacts, obviously, the Kohinoor, you know, something we wish we had.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen it. I've been to London a couple of times, but I've never gone to see it. I've drove by it, though, like, where it is and stuff. But, yeah, a couple of things I've actually gotten to see in London. You can go to the Victoria and Albert Museum, and they have the golden throne of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. So that was, like, one of the first times I've ever went to a museum to see, like, something Sikh-related. So seeing that was like, you know, pretty crazy, seeing it with your own eyes. Recently, I went to the Wallace collection. I just made a video on SikhScope about it. They have a sword of Maharaja Ranjit Singh there. And also they have a qatar from like the Misl Era. So that was pretty cool to see as well.
So it seems like there's a lot of this stuff that's like from the Misl Era, right? Do you know if there's anything from like actual Guru Sahib's times? Because I think during like the British era and stuff, like you said, the British were there. They obviously documented a lot of things, but prior to the British coming, like let's say during the rule of the Mughals, right? The Mughals are also known to have a lot of like intrinsic art, right? They were big on art and all these like architecture things, right? We've seen structures, huge structures, right? Even mosques, masjids that are like they're so beautiful, right? So, Islam and the Mughal Empire, they obviously promoted art a lot, and I know, Guru Sahib, they also had like art on Guru Sahib as well. So, what do you know about that?
From the Mughal side, I don't know that much, like how much they sponsored it, because obviously, like the main lineage, like Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji and like forward, they were pretty opposed to it, right? They were more on the side of like Ram Rai. Like you go to that Gurdwara and it doesn't look like a Gurdwara as much. Like there's an old photograph, if you can find it, from like the 1880s. It looks more like a masjid than it does a Gurdwara. Yeah. So the Mughals, they supported rival lineages more. But if you go to some of these Gurdwaras of like the other lineages that aren't the mainstream of Sikhi, they have like these old paintings of the Gurus that we don't have in the main Gurdwaras, because it's maybe, the frescoes, like,
private collections or things like that,
they got rid of, because they're like, oh, there should be no imagery in Sikhi, like Gurdwara shouldn't have imagery, right? So a lot of the paintings and the Gurdwaras, they got like whitewashed and
so
covered up.
Do you know where this concept came from, this idea that like there shouldn't be images or pictures?
I don't know. The only thing I can think of is like the recent era. Like even if you look back, like the main paintings that we have today of the Gurus, right, of Guru Nanak Dev Ji by like Sobha Singh and stuff like that, they didn't come a long time ago. They came fairly recently.
Yeah, they're more
like
based
in the
on
60s,
like,
right?
They're based on like imagination and things like that.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So all those images are very popular now, but now is also the time where people say no imagery. A lot of like the Gurdwaras, they get rebuilt. Like, we lose all those frescoes and stuff like that.
The originality is gone.
Yeah, exactly. But if we look into like the history and we delve into it, imagery isn't something that was banned or like looked down upon. If you go to Garbala's Pasha-i Shevi, right, a text that's very close to Guru Gobind Singh Ji's time, like 10 years after their Jyoti Jyot, that text I think is completed or started somewhere around 1718. And there's an episode of Bhai Bidhi Chand going to get artists to paint a portrait of Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji. And another interesting part, so if you go to Sur Singh, which is by Bidhi Chand's Pind, they have a ton of paintings. Right? Yeah, Sur Singh near Amritsar. Yeah. They have a ton of paintings that are claimed to be contemporary of the Gurus. Like that, or there's one right next to that one you can find. Another interesting thing is in Suraj Prakash, when Bhai Bidhi Chand passes away, Bidhi Chand's son comes to Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji and he's like, even though my father passed away, I want to stay with my Guru. And Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji says, no, go back to your parent, take care of your family. And Bhai Santokh Singh writes, like, the Guru gives Bidhi Chand's son back a couple of things. And one of the things he gives back to him is a painting. Wow. So, like, it doesn't say, like, what the painting is, but, like, you can assume maybe it's that painting of Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji that he gave back.
So do you think it would be possible to find that picture or painting?
I think they have a lot of Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji if you go to Sur Singh. Okay. So, like, which one it is, I think they have like 5, 6 there. Okay. So it could be any of those, honestly. So it's just, if you go back into like these old texts, like I mentioned, like Garbalas, now I mentioned Suraj Prakash, those texts are like over 100 years apart, but they both have imagery of the Guru, paintings of the Guru, and it's not looked down upon, right? Yeah. I think another episode we can look into from Suraj Prakash is an episode of Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji. They go to the east, in eastern India, and they meet the Sangat there, and there's a Bibi. I talked about this, I think, in my presentation at Davis, right?
Yeah, I remember.
So there's this Bibi, and she sees Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, and she says, I see my Guru for like the first time, and what can I do to like have your memory like stay with me forever? And she asks him, or he says like, I'll always be with you, like as the Guru. And then she asks him if he can get, or if she can get a painting done of him, of Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, a portrait. And he says yes, like that's fine. And the painter starts to do the portrait, and then when he gets to the face, he says, the face is glowing so much, I can't paint this. right? Like I'm struggling to, I just can't.
Put the facial features like.
And and Suraj Prakash says that Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji takes the pen and they draw their own face in, right?
Yeah. And this is quoted in the Granth?
In Suraj Prakash, this is an episode, I think you can go find it, right?
Wow,
and then someone read this episode nearly 100 years later. I forgot what their name was. I think they were a scholar or a researcher in Sikhi. And they read this story and they traveled to East India. And they went to go find that Gurdwara, like where that Bibi could have been. And they go and they find the descendant of that Bibi and they find the portrait of Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji. So like hundreds of miles away, he travels and like the text is basically like authentic. The story's authenticated, right?
Yeah.
Because like
the evidence goes hand in hand.
Yeah, without evidence, like you could believe the story, but then like going there, meeting the descendant of that person, and they still have that photo with them, right, in their lineage, or the portrait of Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji. So I think it's a conversation like that needs to be had. That, you know, art is something that's always been part of Sikh culture. Yeah. Obviously, worshipping images and idols is against Sikhi. Yeah. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But having images of the gurus, as you can see, like, from before colonialism, like Suraj Prakash is before colonialism, Garbala's way before colonialism, right? So you look at these sources and they mention these things. So it just makes you think, like, imagery has always been there. Yeah. So, like, why now are people saying?
I mean, and that imagery, I think, just given its like historical value, now it's considered art now, right? Yeah. So we shouldn't be looking down on art, period, right? Whether it's Sikh art, you know. I think it would be foolish for us to say that, oh, we need to get rid of this imagery just because it has, like, you know, some, I guess, like, glimpse or some type of, like, reference of Guru Sahib in it, you know?
Yeah.
If it's art, I believe it should be put out there so, like, you know, people know. And especially the history behind, like, the authorization of that painting and things like that, you know, that actually adds to the value of the art as well, you know, the sakhis and the stories that are given with it. So in terms of artifacts, right, is there anything aside from, I know there's weapons, there's probably countless weapons, right? But is there anything, like, in terms of artifacts that you've seen that isn't a weapon? I guess you could say, like, maybe like a robe or some piece of, like, artifact that's directly related to Guru Sahibs?
In terms of that, like if you go to small gurdwaras, right, in Punjab, and there's a lot of them that are scattered over, you can find like small relics of the Guru, like maybe a comb. They'll say, "Oh, this is Guru Sahib's comb," or like a Gurdka Sahib, and you find these small things. You can definitely find them. Like you go on YouTube, it's on like the Punjabi side. You're not gonna find these videos in English, but people go to these small gurdwaras that are said to have been visited by the Guru. Like they show the relics and stuff like that. So there's a lot of them there. That type of stuff I don't think is in collections as much.
Yeah, it wouldn't be much collection.
But I think one interesting thing is to go back to is Guru Gobind Singh Ji's Kalgi, right? It's said to have been in Maharaja Ranjit Singh's treasury, right?
In his khajana.
Yeah. So after the Second Anglo-Sikh War, you know, Lahore Darbar is fully taken over, and John Logan, he's the person that became the guardian of Maharaja Dalip Singh when they take him to England, right? So his wife, Lady Logan, she has a cousin, and that cousin works for her husband, for John Logan, right? So there's a connection there. And he writes a letter to his cousin, to Lady Logan, and he walks into the treasury and he sees all these things. And you read the letter and you can like feel the excitement, like it coming out of the page, right? He's like, I'm walking through the treasury. There's gold everywhere. There's Kashmir shawls everywhere. And then he makes a list of all like the important things. He puts like 10, 15 things down. At the top is the Kohinoor, right? And then he mentions a couple other things. He mentions that Ranjit Singh had his father's wedding dress that he wore to his wedding. Like that's very cool thing. Like you wouldn't expect that to be like in the treasury, right?
Like, you know,
So like where that is now, I have no idea. But it was written down on the list.
I mean, it's safe to presume that it's probably in like the British collections or something.
Private collection, yeah. There's like no written. I don't think there is a record of it like after that. Okay, and then there's Guru Gobind Singh Ji's Kalgi is also written on the list. Like how important it is. And that,
so he gives a description of like why it's important and everything.
No, I think he just lists it down, and like those people were familiar with Punjab and Sikhi.
But he thought that it was like something very important to write.
Important, right? Exactly. And so did Ranjit Singh. They would say like he would wear the Kalgi himself, right? and obviously put it in this treasury with all those other things. That Kalgi it's been lost over time. Like they've tracked it through different auctions in the UK. I think it went through like 2 auctions or 3 auctions. After that, they don't know where it went, right? It's been lost. People have tried to find it. They're still trying to find it. I think there was one that came recently, like 10, 15 years ago, that claimed to be the Kalgi of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and I don't know, they did some sort of testing and found it was fake.
How did they test it?
I have no idea. I think it's written in an article. You can go find it somewhere. But yeah, so that original Kalgi, right, worn by Maharaja Ranjit Singh, also worn by Guru Gobind Singh Ji, right?
Yeah.
So
that's
like
definitely,
crazy artifact. Yeah. Don't know where it is. Might be lost forever. Who knows? Maybe it's in a private collection.
Hopefully, man, it's not lost. Yeah, hopefully it's in a
exactly. So like those type of artifacts and stuff like that.
I mean, yeah. Hey, if anybody watching this has like private collections and stuff, let us know, man. We want to like document it, like show the people.
Exactly, man. Just bring it out.
I'm sure people have like in their like we wouldn't expect it, but like in our homes we have like some crazy things. Like for example, me myself, I have like these coins from the Sikh Empire, right? And they were in circulation at the time, and they're all like worn down. And so like it's one thing like seeing the coins. I think there's like replicas made all the time, but to know that this coin was used in circulation during the Sikh Empire, and it's just laying in my house, right? But things like that, I'm sure like you have like artifacts like that at your house as well, right? Do you have anything?
Not anything that dates that far back. I have more like things related to my family and stuff like that, like when they were in like the World Wars, stuff like that.
You have history. Your family has history in the World Wars.
Yeah, so like that's like my great uncle served in like World War I, right? And we found it on like the website. It's Punjabi's worldwar1.com something. It was really recent by the UK PHA. And so yeah, we found that. And also just like recent things like keep like of our parents. Like I found like my grandpa's Hathiar license, right, when I went to India. So I thought that was very dope.
Yeah, that's definitely something.
Preserve that and keep it, right? So yeah, definitely we have these like family things that are valuable to us. Yeah. Also like Sikh artifacts, if you are lucky enough to have something like that, like you do with the coins, that's very cool to see as well.
So I mean, we've talked about art, we've talked about artifacts, but I do want to get to our next point, our last point, contemporary affairs, maybe today and from Guru Sahib's time as well, and I come across a lot of these documents that you wouldn't expect to find, but they're like intelligence reports from Delhi Darbar, right, of Aurangzeb. And we see these descriptions in these reports of Guru Sahib, and they describe Guru Sahibs, right? How they looked, what they did, their actions. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy to see, like, a written account of what's happening. It's almost like visualizing like you were there, So it's one thing seeing art, and then it's another thing seeing what the quote-unquote enemy was saying as well, right? What their view was. And a lot of it is, like, it's praising, a lot of it is praising Guru Sahib. They talk about, for example... something controversial in the reports is that Nawe Pasha Shahidi was not for Tilak Janu, it was actually for a new nation, right? Millat No. Something like that. But in those reports where they're talking about that new nation, they describe Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, who looked like an old man who was a jewel, right? And like how his face was glowing and he had like a halo on his head, So, that description itself, I think, you could almost make a painting off of that,
Yeah, exactly.
So, but it comes from intelligence reports, which is interesting. That's also, I think, something we need to look at, given the contemporary affairs and things like that, because, like they say, history repeats itself, right? So if we look at those times and the way the governments were acting and the Sikh communities, the Sikh, I guess you could say, nations' view on how they were standing against these governments and stuff like that. Because I do want to mention, Saadi ladai jehdi sigi kadi Mughਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਨਹੀਂ sigi. It wasn't against any religion. It was against the state, right? And not to say that the state isn't always bad. Obviously, they do some good things. Like, for example, they had descriptions of these Guru Sahibs. They even had some paintings authorized as well. I think, not I don't know about Aurangzeb, but I want to say Raja Bhim Chand. He obviously had like some battles with Guru Gobind Singh Ji, right? But he was actually on a diplomatic mission. I think he went to Anandpuri Sahib to discuss a peace treaty with Guru Sahib, right? And from that peace treaty, what happened, I think it was in Bilaspur. You would know more about it, I think, right? The Bilaspur, I don't know what it's called, but pretty much people from Bilaspur moved to Anandpur Sahib because of that peace negotiation. And a lot of the people that moved were painters, right? And so they would paint depictions and things like that about that time. So do you know anything about that?
I think one interesting thing, I don't know exactly like the incident, but from that, there was like a ripple effect. So these
I
artists,
mean, the ripple effect. That's what I want to get to. Yeah,
the artists come from like the Punjab Hills. Like the Punjab Hills are famous for portraitures and stuff like that. The ones you find of even past the Guru's time, you go to Maharaja and Ranjit Singh's time, and the paintings of the Gurus, like they all mostly come from like the Punjab Hills and stuff like that. So those artists shift to Anandpur, just like poets do, right? Like Bhai Nandlal comes from the Mughal court to Guru Gobind Singh Ji's court. Like that, artists come from the Punjab Hills to Anandpur. And an interesting thing we see is if you actually search up the first Dasam Granth Bir that's dated to 1696, I think, it has a portrait of Guru Gobind Singh Ji in there, right? And what's unique is like people that have done research into portraits and stuff like that, they say that that painting or that portrait of Guru Gobind Singh Ji is unlike the other portraits from the surrounding hill states. So what they come up, or the theory that they've come up with, is in that time at the Anandpur Darbar, a new style of painting had come, and they call it the Anandpuri style. Okay. Because it's so distinct from the surrounding portraits from the Punjab Hills that they say the artists there created a unique style of portraiture.
Like styles. I think previous to that, like we could see a lot of like portraits and pictures. They look almost like very similar to like these Islamic arts and histories and people like that, right? Like we see pictures that are, it's almost hard to determine whether it's Sikh art or whether it's like Mughal art or things like that, right? So you're saying that the Anandpuri style was completely like you would be able to immediately recognize it, right?
I wouldn't say like completely, maybe not to the average eye, like but you can see stuff in there that would make you be able to tell the difference between a Sikh painting and a Mughal painting. So there are very few examples of the Anandpur style that survive. Like the main one is from that Dasam Granth Bir. I don't know if any others survive because obviously, you know, after the battle at Anandpur and stuff like that, a lot of stuff was lost, and a lot of those paintings were lost as well. Yeah. So the main one we have is of that. So
I think there's a Sakhi Sarsa Nadi te like jadon wo choda pe asega. There was like a carriage or a horse or something of I don't know. I had like an insane amount of like granths and scriptures and all these different things, and unfortunately, it went down into the river because there was a storm going on, and we lost a lot of relics and artifacts during that time.
I think that was called the Vidya Sagar Granth. It was like a massive granth of translated texts from the Anandpur Darbar that tons of poets worked on and stuff like that, and it was lost in the river.
I think like you mentioned by Nandlal Ji, right, or like Nandlal Goyal. His reports actually come up in or his works come up in the reports. Like right here, you could say in Ganjanama Nawi Pashahi. He literally describes like Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji. It says here, I even have a quote right here. It says, "This was the most important evidence about Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, written by the Darbari Kavi of Guru Gobind Singh Ji in 1695." And they're referring to Nandlal Goya, sorry.
Yeah, so I think that's also a very interesting, like you brought up the court records and stuff like that. You read some of the ones of Guru Gobind Singh Ji coming into Bahadur Shah's court, because after Aurangzeb passed away, Bahadur Shah became, right, the emperor and stuff like that. And they talk about Guru Gobind Singh Ji going into the court in Delhi, and they come with their kurban, like a soldier, right? Like when you go into the court, you're supposed to take all the weaponry and stuff like that off.
Get, like, checked
and you see the report of the people in the court, and they're writing it like Guru Gobind Singh walks in there like on their own sovereignty, right? Like they don't bow to like the feet of Bahadur Shah or anything like that. Exactly. And I think another interesting thing is after Guru Gobind Singh Ji's Jyoti Jyot, there's a report of Bahadur Shah finding out that Guru Gobind Singh Ji had passed away, or their Jyoti Jyot, and they say not to take those things that they have, and they treat him like a spiritual person. So whenever like a spiritual person passed away, they wouldn't take their things like they would a normal person. I forget what the word they use for it. It's in Persian, but they say since they're a spiritual person, don't take their items, don't take anything, right? Because, you know, it might curse them or something like that. Yeah. So I think that's like another special relation that even though Sikhs and Mughals, you know, have like a complex history, Bahadur Shah, after that, right, when he's dealing with Banda Singh Bahadur, he's really ruthless with how he treats Sikhs, right? He gives orders like find any Sikh and kill them, right?
Yeah.
But just before with Guru Gobind Singh Ji, he said they're a special spiritual person, don't take their things, right?
Yeah.
So it's a complex relationship. I think you can't say they've always been against each other. Even if you go back to Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, right? With Shah Jahan, even though Jahangir is responsible for Guru Arjan Dev Ji's Shahidi, there's moments where Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji converses with Jahangir, right? Even though they're responsible for their father's Shahidi. So it's a complex relationship. There's no binaries, right?
Yeah.
So you gotta like see how the relationship evolves over time and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think
we could see that like go on like especially like with this complex relationship. We could see it with Aurangzeb, and I have it documented right here. His relationship with Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, who he ultimately ended up ordering to be Shaheed. He literally says like in one of the reports, it's an anonymous writer. But the translation, I'm going to quote it, it says, when the news of the people gathering around Guru Tegh Bahadur emerging of a new millet, which means nation, because at the times, I just want to make this mention, I want to mention this, that Aurangzeb was receiving reports, intelligence reports, saying that Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji was actually creating a new nation, a Sikh nation, because of like, he was getting so much support from the Sikh community, and that he wasn't no longer, I guess they said like he was no longer spiritual, he was more, I guess, becoming like a leader and activist, things like that. But in this report right here, it's saying when the news broke out of the new nation, the determination of Jats reached the ears of Aurangzeb Badshah. He ordered, if he, referring to Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, sits alone like fakirs, he will not be given any trouble. Rather, considerable amount of continue to be paid to him out of this royal treasury like any other fakirs engrossed in prayer. So pretty much he was saying that he's going to be getting paid out of the royal treasury if he truly is a fakir and a spiritual person.
Yeah.
But and that's, like you said, that complex relationship. It's the same Aurangzeb who ultimately gave the order to get him Shaheed.
With Bahadur Shah, he also said, Guru Gobind Singh is a spiritual person, don't take their stuff. So there was obviously a line, and I guess Aurangzeb thought Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji crossed that line, right?
Yeah.
They were becoming too temporal. They were trying to create their own Raj.
I mean, I think we should definitely look at the reports Aurangzeb was getting, because that'll determine why he was like, why he acted the way he did. Originally he thought he might have just been a spiritual person, but based off of the reports he was getting and the intelligence suggesting that, Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji was starting a new nation, that's why he ultimately gave that order,
Yeah. And I think that's what makes the next part, like the Zafarnama, really interesting, right? When Guru Gobind Singh Ji pens that to Aurangzeb, they write it in Persian, so he understands it. There's a lot of references to the Shahnameh, right? A text that's like, it's a famous Persian text that talks about like mythological heroes from like Persia and Iran. And it's like a text that was very big in the Mughal court.
And it's like a religious text or like
it's more of like a folk mythological text.
Okay. Yeah. But you said they used it in their courts?
Yeah, it's drawn upon a lot. Like how maybe like not a direct comparison. Like Suraj Prakash is for Sikhs. Yeah. Like there's no Sikh like now Katha, like history and stuff like that heavily relies on Suraj Prakash, right?
Yeah. Or like some type of like, I guess like Granth from those times that like accurately depict what happened.
You can't talk about like Persian history or like Persian like literature without mentioning like the Shahnameh, right? And obviously at the courts of the Mughals, like Persian was a big thing. So Guru Gobind Singh Ji knew that as well. So they put a lot of references of like those mythological heroes into the Zafarnama. So Aurangzeb gets it. And if you read the reports, the court records, after Guru Gobind Singh Ji, or after Aurangzeb gets the Zafarnama from Guru Gobind Singh Ji, Aurangzeb sends like a council and soldiers to Guru Gobind Singh Ji to bring them to Delhi, or I think they were still in southern India. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, it was like a court order that he gave or something.
Yeah,
like that, right?
And he tells like the rulers that were against Guru Gobind Singh Ji to provide the Guru protection as he passes through your lands and let him safely reach me.
Wow. So
if you search up a book called Sikh History from Persian Sources, you can find like these court records and stuff like that of Aurangzeb making that order. So so once he read the Zafarnama, mind changed, something changed, heart changed, right?
Yeah.
The words were powerful enough. Yeah, spooked. But unfortunately, as the Guru was making the journey, Aurangzeb passed away. So that meeting never happened.
Yeah.
But, it's crazy to think about Like, what if that did happen? You know, what would have come out of that?
Yeah.
Sikh-Mughal relations.
Definitely. At least in terms of, like, intelligence and government relations and, like, you know, policy and things like that, you know? Because I think we definitely need to, like, remember that whether or not we were a certified separate state or not, we were still acting as a government body, right? It's not a small deal that the Badshah of the Mughal Empire was, like, talking to, you know, like, diplomats and things like that from the Sikh community and directly talking to Guru Sahib himself as well, you know?
Yeah. And I think another interesting thing that we're talking about, you know, like state formation and stuff like that, I think there's a book called Rajasthani Documents on Banda Singh Bahadur. And when Banda Singh was waging war, right, in Punjab against the Mughals and the hill states, he wasn't just acting as a general. He was also acting as a diplomat. He sends letters out because he himself also from a high caste to emperors and kings in Rajasthan, asking them for their help. And he's like, to revolt against the Mughals, right? This is your duty to uphold Dharam. And those documents have been like locked away for a long time. And this Sikh scholar, the book, again, Rajasthani Documents on Banda Singh Bahadur, I think is what it's called. He reached out to like other states to revolt against the Mughals. They ultimately don't come to help.
Yeah.
But it's just another interesting thing to see, you know, like the complexity of what the situation was, right? First, you know, Guru Gobind Singh Ji and Aurangzeb, you know, having a direct line, right? Them conversing. At that time, like Sikhs were such a small population. So for like the Emperor of India to be like paying special attention to them, it just showed like,
it just goes back to like their diplomatic importance, you know?
Exactly. And so I think those documents too, like of Banda Singh Bahadur, just shows like Sikhs and their state formation, how complex it was.
Yeah.
Things that we don't like hear about as much, like in Katha and stuff like that. We hear about like the battles and stuff like that, but this part, like the research and stuff like that, I think is really cool to see and like to bring that out. To, like,
we hear about the Yuddha Niti, but we rarely hear about the Rajniti, you know? Rajniti and Yuddha Niti, they go hand in hand. So just, you know, like ending with Rajniti and Yuddha Niti, I think we need to really focus on the things that we do with politics. We need to ensure that we're able to keep our stages, whether we're doing things like promoting this type of art, whether we're talking about intelligence reports, anything, we need to be careful. Like, especially with our social medias as well, you know, like TikTok as well. I know you have history with them. Your SikhScope account, I think it got took down a little bit, or one of your posts.
Yeah, a couple of posts have gotten taken down, but, you know, I've gotten them back up. Mostly they would report it for like the Qur'ans and stuff like that, because it's like a very child-friendly website or app. So those type of things, they don't really like you putting up there. So I try my best, you know, to make sure it doesn't get taken down. But I've also posted things like swords of like Maharaja Ranjit Singh or like weapons from the Guru's time, and those haven't gotten taken down.
But maybe those because like have like artistic value. And
like maybe they think they're just ceremonial. So like those type of weapons, like they're fine with. It's very give and take.
Yeah. So do you mostly like, post like art, or do you like
for SikhScope? The videos I didn't start until way after I started like the IG and Twitter. So like Twitter, I remember I started I think May 2021. Yeah, May 2021. And the TikTok I just started August 2022. So like a year and a half later, I started that. I don't know what made me want to start doing it. I just thought, you know what, I have some ideas and let me just put it up there. So at first I just posted videos where I didn't talk over them. I just found historical videos. Like there was this video from Panja Sahib, Gurdwara Panja Sahib, and it was from the 1970s. And it showed like people from that time, right? How the Gurdwara looked, what the practices were, what they wore. That did really well. Then I also posted these clips from Sidhu Moosewala's SYL song. The original clips.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. And the clips were actually from Operation Blue Star. So I was like, oh, this is really cool too. So I can like show what the original videos are like unedited, like people like shouting Jakare and stuff like that, right? And then one of my first videos that I ever did with my voice over it was about the lost Palace of Amritsar. And that was Maharaja Ranjit Singh's palace that they took down to put the Gothic clock tower right in the corner. And
what do you mean?
So back in the Sikh Empire days, there was a Kal Takht right here, right? And to the right of it, there was a large palace. And you see it in paintings, like there's paintings from the 1830s, so like when Ranjit Singh was still alive. and they paint Darbar Sahib, and in the back you can see a huge palace. There's like huge columns everywhere, and people research and they find out that's Maharaja Ranjit Singh's palace. So like back in the day, Darbar Sahib, like nowadays, is very different to back then. Yeah. So back then it was like mungas and houses of like prominent sardars, right? The Ramgarhi Bunga now, we still have that, right? Yeah. Obviously, Akal Takht, known as Akal Bunga, right? Yeah. There was also houses for scholars, but also a lot for sardars. Okay. And obviously, Maharaja Ranjit Singh, being Sher e Punjab, like his was huge, right? Yeah. It was very recognizable. So I posted a video about that. There's actually photographs of it as well.
Yeah, how they took it down and like
they took it down.
What do they call it, the Kantakar or something?
Yeah, the Kantakar, the Gothic clock tower. So there's, I think, 2 or 3 photographs of the palace. One that shows the whole palace is taken from Gurdwara Baba Atal Rai, right? When you go to the top floor, you can see all of Darbar Sahib, and you can see the palace in whole. And other ones you can just see like columns or the roof. But in paintings as well, you can see the whole thing. So that's the first video I made, like with my voice over it, and it did really well. Like people really enjoyed it. So I was like, oh, let me continue with this, right? And
definitely. I mean, I remember I enjoyed watching them too.
Yeah, and it kind of just blew up from there. So I was like, yeah, I'll keep doing it. I enjoy making those videos, right? It's cool researching. Like I learn stuff myself too. So when I'm researching it, the ideas just pop into my head, like of what to make a video about. I have no set schedule or anything what I want to talk about. I just find something cool. I'm like, oh, other people probably want to like hear about this too. Yeah. So yeah. I mean,
are you on any other platforms aside from TikTok?
So Twitter was where I started at SikhScope, right? I'm still pretty active on there. IG as well. That one's a little smaller. I don't really focus on that as much. Yeah. But TikTok now is like my biggest platform. Okay. It really blew up. So yeah. I'm pretty active on TikTok and Twitter, so those are the 2 main spaces.
For sure.
But yeah,
I think it's just we just need to be very careful in how we store these types of contents and things like that, these videos, because we know they're gonna get taken down. So follow Amit Singh at SikhScope on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Hopefully you could diversify out to other platforms as well. Thank you for being here on Khudle Vichar. We'd love to have you back sometime soon with more art and history facts. So. Thank you.
Man, thank you so much for inviting me, man. I had a good time, hopefully more podcasts to come. So, yeah.
Yeah. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.